she has felt something that I've not. I've not killed a 187 and 5/8 inch buck in my life. I want to. I genuinely do, and that's why I keep probably going as hard and as long as I do. But she got to feel that, and I'm pumped for her for that. So I think we should probably hear her end of that and the ending of Shank.
Lights, camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera!
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
Trail Cam Radio from the guys at Exodus.
All right, so we are sitting down with the Bayus family. We have Stacy and Dan. Some of you may recognize the Bayus name as Dan. He was one of the first guests on the podcast way back 2018. Yeah, sometime last year.
Episode 4, right?
It may have been.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know. It's
Check
been
it
such
out.
a long time. We don't even keep track anymore. But it was a well received episode. You've been a brand and personal friend for many, many years. So we're excited to sit down with your beautiful wife and yourself to talk 2019 deer hunting and about a new venture you guys have gotten into. I guess is it Stacy's venture?
It
or
is
is it your
completely
venture?
my thing.
Okay.
However, some people don't know that yet. So
Well, you'll have the chance to talk about that, I guess. So let's talk about the 2019, your personal hunting seasons. How has 2019 treated you guys?
it's treated me really well. I don't know if it's treated Dan as nicely.
No, it's been honestly. So I'm holding both tags, Ohio and Pennsylvania. However, here's what I'm going to tell you: is it's probably been one of my best seasons. I think people measure their deer seasons completely different than the next, and for me, what I've learned this season is that, for one, I don't have to be the trigger man. I genuinely don't have to be. When Jackson shot his buck in PA this year, and he was a stud, we actually got video of him on the Exodus trail camera. When he shot that buck, I can promise you right now, there's probably been one deer that I've shot in my entire life, and that was my first one, that made me so excited, that made my heart pound like that. And you can ask Stacy, because I called her directly after. I couldn't control my mouth. I couldn't control my words. I couldn't control my body.
Couldn't even let the kid talk.
I wanted to yeah, I was so excited. And you know what? Because I felt so much a part of that, and I was. And there was a lot of thought process that went into why we were there, when we were there, and how we were there. And a lot of pre-planning, a lot of scouting, a lot of, that buck was coming into one of my rope scrapes. I know that, some people don't like the rope scrapes, but here's the deal, man, is we've killed a couple good bucks on them, or a few, and we've had a lot of luck. So my season hasn't been the best as far as me shooting deer, but I've had one of the best seasons I think I'll ever have.
That's awesome. Super awesome. Well, I think that's probably, we just talked about this maybe 2 episodes ago, is I guess how people measure success and how it differs from hunter to hunter, because no one can measure that for you. It doesn't matter if you're on social media, harvest photos, web forums, YouTube, like that. Whitetail hunting is a selfish sport. Now, it can be a family sport, but ultimately you are the only person that defines success and what that means, what that feels like. So, yeah, man, that's a cool story.
It's amazing from hunting with Stacy and Jackson and different people. I've learned like her success, or her measure of success, or what makes a good season is completely different than mine. And that's what the beauty of hunting is we all, Stacy's hunting her hunt, I'm hunting my hunt, you're hunting your hunt. Like what I might pass on might be something you'd shoot, or what you might pass on might be something I know that you had a shot at an animal this year that, I've been there enough times where I'm like, I'm going to probably take a marginal shot, and I give you kudos. Good for you. Seriously. But that's everybody hunts their own hunt. And You know what? Guess what? I might have took that shot and been doom and gloom and sad that I did, but that's what the beauty of hunting is everybody is a different human being. We make different decisions. We all have different wants, and we all have different goals and needs.
100%. 100%.
It's not always about the deer either. It's situational. Being a woman hunter, and I work full time and, busy, and this whole tracking thing came up, and I needed to clear my plate to get out there and track for other hunters. So when I was in PA, I was getting frustrated with him because I was like, let me shoot the legal deer that walks in front of me, because that will free me up to help other people. So, that was success for me, was just being able to fill my tag so I could get out there and work my dog. She needed work this season. This is her first season. So, it's not always just about the deer. It's the situation surrounding it, and
100%.
being busy and wanting to spend more time with my son. Some people are, I'm happy just punching my tag every year, and that's what it is for me. So
I think that's a lot of, that's one of the things, like when we talk about social media and people get bashed, like for sharing part of their hunt, and maybe it's not up to someone else's standards, or not up to the way someone else hunts. And it's like, what are the circumstances? Like, you don't know. That could be the one and only time that guy's been in the woods for 2 years, because he's busy working 2 jobs, taking care of his family,
right,
and doing whatever manly things he has to do. So it's like, if you're happy, shoot it. No one, because at the end of the day,
right?
like, no one else really cares. No one else cares if you or I kill a big deer. They might care for
15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. And then they forget, and no one else remembers. So
exactly right.
do whatever makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the dogs. That's something we definitely want to talk, and we want to talk a lot about, because personally I have a lot of, I guess selfishly, I want to ask a lot of questions.
Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. But before we get into that, I know there's a story of a specific deer that Stacy killed this year that Dan, you've put a lot of work in, and we've had several talks about this deer. Actually, we may have talked about this deer last year on episode 4 or whatever.
I was all in for him.
Yeah,
last year.
Right. So this is kind of a long story.
Yeah,
but it came to an end this year.
It sure did.
Let's talk a little bit about it, Stacy. Let's hear it.
I know Dan had a lot of time, money, everything invested in this deer, and I don't know. I call this deer the mistress, because it was really, it kept him up at night. It was on his mind. It was on all his thoughts, and kind of made me in a way jealous. So I was happy to put an end to this deer for that reason alone. I had no personal connection with this deer, really. It was Dan's.
Can I interrupt here? So I have been known to form genuine relationships with specific animals, and I know it's stupid, and I know it's weird. I know there might be someone out there listening that
it's like an obsession almost.
It is. It genuinely is.
Yeah.
And I fall in love with an animal, and I want to learn everything about that animal, and that's once we go back to that. That's my hunt. That's what I get out of it. But I take it too far, and I know I do. With that buck, I'll give you some stories. I'm going to make myself look pretty terrible here as a human being and as a husband. But I, last year on Christmas Day.
Oh, yeah.
Christmas Day, we had a cold front that moved in, and I knew that there was a lot of snow coming. Well, in my book, I don't care what day it is. That's a good day to go hunt, right? Because they're probably going to be feeding, and they're probably going to be moving. So I did go hunting, and obviously I didn't kill the deer. He outsmarted me as he did that whole last season and even the season before. We had a lot of discussions about how I was spending my money when it came food plot season time, and buying a specific redneck ghillie blind to put up by the bedding area that I paid my neighbor to go in and brush hog, and then I later went and planted, and there was I actually manicured the entire farm for that one buck. Now, that he's gone, it's crazy. It's almost there's no other deer that like it's not for them, or there's some good bucks still running it. However, I put way too much time into it, and it's weird how things work out. When we went in there to hunt that night.
Well, you didn't even want to go that night.
I didn't.
He told me it would be a good weekend for a date because it is too warm to go hunting. It was like, what, 80s?
Opening day of Ohio, we had, I believe it was 70 degrees, and we had a weather front that was moving through. It was just a small one, though. But here's what made me say, okay, let's do this. For one, she was pulling at me, and
I never miss opening day ever.
So with that, we had a northwest wind switching to a west wind. On that specific wind, I know. Well, for one, I had the cell phone. The render was running up there, right? But I knew that buck was bedding there. When that wind switched from the northwest to the west wind was when we were going in at 4 p.m. Okay. That when we walked way out and around, I made my mistakes last year and the year before that going in where he was able to see us. This deer literally watched the tractor trail that we were walking up on or pulling up on in some cases.
So that deer was bedded in a spot where he was watching you pull into your parking area.
He was watching the neighbors.
Get ready, get dressed, walk in, and he
was able to see the road, basically. So if we were there, if we pulled into that drive, which is the only parking spot at this it's a smaller farm, but he knew we were there, or the neighbor.
Let me remind you, you were not putting me in there that night to hunt that deer.
I was getting there.
Because we checked. Dan's real big into the cameras. I'm just like, hey, it's opening day. We're going no matter what. That's my kind of mentality. That's how I grew up with my dad hunting. And so the camera had actually fallen off the tree that day. So he goes to check it. It was like perfect for. We're looking at the camera. He's like, we're not hunting for sure. We're not going in. And I said, why? He's like, look. And it was a picture of the grass, on the ground. The raccoons had pulled it off the tree. And I said, so what? And he, no, we can't go in after this deer. He's very tactical. Like he has everything planned out. He has to check the cell phone cameras. And so this was just perfect that it happened the way that it did. So I encouraged him, we should go in no matter what. So we went in, but he had me hunting moose was the deer he thought would show up. And he was kind of a bully deer. He was bullying the other deers off.
He had been showing up literally 5 days in a row in the evenings. And I thought there's no way, Shank was up there, but he wasn't showing up until after dark on the food plot. Mm-hmm. And he was going back to bed at literally, sometimes it was right at last light in the morning. We aren't going to morning hunt in the early season, but I knew he was up there. So what I thought was I had went in there. There was an old, I don't know if it's a milk shack or whatever you want to call it, next to this barn. She was hunting next to the barn. I was probably 50 yards from her, 60 yards, but I was on the downwind side of her, okay? And there's a deer trail that runs out in front of this little shack that I had found in my late season scouting. 2 years ago I found it. Last year I decided to go in there and clear this thing out. It was filled with I can't even tell you all the crap that was in there. I mean, filled with mouse turds for sure. But I spent a lot of time in there, and I probably shaved some years off my life with all the dust and all the pee and poop that I had going in my particles in my lungs. Well, anyways, I hunted that spot, okay? And I thought that if Shank was daylight walking at all, I'm in the bedding area, and where his bed is, I know exactly where his bed was. I literally sat in the thing. I wanted to see what he saw. I did the in-fault, as you will, thing, and I actually sat in the bed and everything. Well, I was probably 60 yards from where he was bedded, and we took a long time getting in there that day, too.
I took my time,
Yeah, we both, were way out and around and took our good old time, as quiet as possible.
And you guys are both hunting off the ground?
Yeah.
At this point?
She was in
I was in a blind.
She was in a
blind. He was in that milk
I was in the milk
shed, whatever.
Okay. And
we split up. he left first and split off and said, hey, go to the shed. So we came in, we took our time. Like he said, it was hot. We didn't want to be sweating by the time we got in there. But, yeah, he split off first, and then I went off to the blind.
So
and then we sat there, and then a storm front. Yeah.
And what did I text you?
I believe I texted you that.
Whatever. But
he didn't want to hunt. He didn't think the weather was good.
As that front moved through, okay, we had like crazy winds pick up, and then it stopped. And I told her the second that this stops, or at least in my head, I don't know if I told her that, but I'm telling that the deer are going to move. You know, moose is probably going to walk in front of you. Make sure you're ready, right? Well, it was a moose that showed up.
It was a doe first.
It was a doe and a fawn that showed up first.
And I texted you.
She texted me, said they're leaving the food plot. They're coming down toward you. And like, so we're literally 50 yards apart. By the time that she texted me, these things were already in front of me, like right, I'm talking, 3 yards away actually. And then maybe 2 minutes later, I got Skank. OMG, Skank is dead, or Shank is dead. And
no, I didn't say
but
he's
she
dead.
couldn't like type it. You could see like there was all messed up, and for whatever reason, her predictive text said, Skank. But I like my eyes. I was like, I'm serious, man. I was like, I wanted to run right to her because I was pumped for her. And I honestly had to play through my head like, well, she's hunting the same property as me, and I'm gonna put her in the best spots. Like. She might kill him. What am I going to feel like if she does? And part of me genuinely felt like I would be jealous or upset. But when that happened, I will say this, okay, is I knew that, I hunted that deer. She's the one that killed him. I would have loved to have been the one to kill him, honestly. I genuinely mean that. But I seriously, for her, I'm so happy, like, for her that she was able to do that. She has felt something that I've not. I've not killed a 187 and 5/8 inch buck in my life. I want to. I genuinely do, and that's why I keep probably going as hard and as long as I do. But she got to feel that, and I'm pumped for her for that. So I think we should probably hear her end of that and the ending of Shank.
After the does hung around for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and then they kind of took off, and I wasn't quite, not running, but they sensed something was up, and they took off, and that's when they went by Dan. And then I'd say 2-3 minutes after that, he was just there. Like, you know how deer sneak up on you sometimes, and they're just there. And I look up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, look at that deer's rack. But he came out, and he was facing me in the food plot. So it felt like an eternity to get this deer to turn. And the problem was I was in a blind, so I only had a small, narrow window. And if you're a crossbow hunter, you know that you're worried about hitting the side of the blind. So I had to be real careful about that, that I had clearance when my bow went off, that it didn't the limb smack the side of the blind. So I'm trying not to watch that, and I'm trying to watch him, and there was brush hanging out over the side of the food plot, and he had come out so close to it. When he took a couple steps, he would have been behind it. So I was just like praying, oh my goodness, like, let this deer turn quickly here so I can get a shot. And I think he took one step, and as soon as he did, Dan knows I'm not real patient. As soon as they give me an opportunity, it's done. Like, it's happening. He took one step broadside, and as soon as his leg was forward, I shot. And through the scope, it's hard to see, where I did not have lighted knocks. He had kept telling me he was going to get him, and it never happened. So, I thought it was a good hit. I heard the hit. That deer, he turned and he leaped 8-10 feet up in the air over where the brush was hanging off the side of the food plot.
It was over our heads, and she said that he didn't touch him. Like, he did actually jump probably 7 foot.
So not just a mule kick. He turned, spun, and he
spun where he was, and he
which is not
leaped.
A good sign.
No,
right. That's
why
I said mule kick. Like, no
mule kick. He spun where he was at, and he took a leap up in the air over the weeds that he had to come through to get into the food plot. And I kind of felt a little bit sick to my stomach at that point. Like, wow, that was a really, like a healthy deer would have done.
Missed.
Yeah. Well, no, I heard the hit and it sounded like chest
okay,
cavity.
okay.
But it was just like, wow, how does he have that much stamina, strength, or whatever to do that? And I'm shaking, and that's when I sent I shot Skank text, which it was just a bunch
really
of jumbled letters, and it came through. He knew exactly what I meant, but I kept my wits about me, and I'm like, well, let's just get out of here quiet, and we headed down to the neighbors and gave it about an hour.
Well, we didn't head to the neighbors. We actually were out getting into the truck and getting all our stuff
getting
in.
quiet.
I had never met this neighbor. But he come out and said, "Hey, you guys want some hot dogs?" We're like, "What?" Like,
I couldn't
yeah,
eat.
we like hot dogs,
So at this point, you guys are back at the truck talking to the neighbors.
Yeah, like
never
I'm
went.
pumped up. I don't even want to go see this guy right now because I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
giant
you just shot
deer's
Shank?
down,
Yeah, but it was
But we
good.
weren't.
Well, that's what I was
good.
going to ask.
I always doubt my shot. I always doubt myself.
So you didn't go into the food plot, retrieve the arrow, look at.
No, because with the dog, I knew she was my backup. I'd hate to have to drive 2 hours home, which is what we ended up doing. But with her as a backup, I wanted to get out of there quiet.
Yep.
Let the deer, lay down, bed down, whatever it needed to expire. We backed out quiet. We went to the truck. But in the meantime, the neighbor comes out. Hey, you want a hot dog? And I'm like, I can't eat right now. I'm so shook up,
I got it. So you actually, before you, or Dan came, or before you went to see Dan, you didn't wait at all. So that 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever you were going to wait after the shot was back at the truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
we snuck out.
Gotcha.
So we went back to the truck then, and he came out. We went over to his place. I had a beer or two, I think, actually, because I just needed to calm my nerves. I'm serious. My heart was pounding. I'm like, oh my God, that's the deer. I never saw that deer in person, swear to God. Or one time I did, but it was not like a 300 yards away. And but so I just wanted to go see this deer, and in my heart he was dead. I've seen, she makes good shots, and given the scenario, it's an open food plot out of a blind when she had a good rest and all that. I felt like he was dead, and I kept trying to reassure her and tell her that this deer's donezo. It's just let's just, whatever you want to do, we'll go back to the truck or whatever, and we'll go ahead. And she wanted to go home and get Remy, so
That was my gut feeling.
yeah.
I spent a lot of time training this dog. I didn't want to lose a deer. I had lost a deer down there last year. That
Big buck,
a big buck,
big 5-year-old
that should have been recovered. Unfortunately, it got pushed and it went into the neighbor's property.
We got on him too soon. And it was. Should we put a?
Nah, I think we're okay. We got the dogs barking, but I think it'll be.
Yeah, Remy's going nuts.
She likes this story.
Yeah, this is her story.
She's on my lap right now. I think it'll be all right.
So I had lost a deer, and it was like reliving that moment again. Same property, another big buck, and I knew the dog was ready. This would have been her first track. So, you put in all this time over the summer with your dog too. I wanted to get the dog, but he was like, no. Let's just give the deer time. We'll go back in and we'll start looking for the arrow. No arrow. No arrow, no blood. No blood in the food plot. Well, I had seen this deer bound off, so I kind of was like, well, I can understand why there was no blood in the food plot. But when we went into the weeds, that wall of weeds that he jumped, didn't see anything there either. Now I'm starting to feel a little sick. Now I'm starting to doubt my shot too. I'm like, I knew I had it on him. It was a 40-yard shot, but I had the 40 right at his lungs and the 30 was on his heart. So we hit somewhere here. But then he was like, finally he agreed. He's like, okay, let's just go home and get the dog. Now that's like a 2-hour drive home.
Yeah, and it was more for the time thing more than even just having the safety of the dog. I knew the property pretty, you know what I mean? I was confident if the deer was dead, I was going to be able to find him myself. But it was her deer. It was no longer about what I wanted to do. It was about what she wanted. She wanted her dog to be there for that. So we made the drive all the way back home, and we got Remy, and then we went all the way back down.
It's a 4-hour round trip.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, what time did we get back? 1:30 in the morning? 2 in the
Oh,
morning?
yeah. 2.
something like that.
I was home by 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah, it was pretty rough, but we had got back in there anyways, and got Remy on the track, and like it was pretty cool to me because I had not seen Remy do an actual track on a deer yet, and it was her first one. Stacy hadn't either. Well, Remy, when we found first blood, which wasn't far from where that wall was that she was talking about, it just took a minute for him to open up, basically. And when he did, he opened up. But Remy locked on that blood, and literally, here's the funny part, okay? She took us 40 yards from where I was sitting, or 35 yards from where I was sitting, and there was blood there, which tells me that Shank ran 35 yards past me, okay? On that same exact trail that he took, I'm guessing, to go to her, he walked 35 yards from me. I never saw him. Never saw him.
But I did.
I didn't even hear him after the shot. I had no idea, but it was cool to watch Remy go right down that trail, and she literally took us. You know where he ended up dying? In that bed.
He went back to bed and died in his bed.
He died in his bed.
Yeah.
100%.
And the arrow was still in him. It was a pass-through, but it was sticking out the other side, and so that's why we couldn't find the arrow.
When we walked up on him, man, I'll never forget like that feeling of like, oh my God, it's actually him. Like when you've hunted an animal for, I'm not kidding. Like you can ask her. I wrongfully asked her to pray for me with it. I would stay awake at night. I would wait for the cell phone camera pictures to come through at night, like, because I didn't want to, like, I wanted to know, like, he's still alive. He didn't get hit by a car today, or like, I'm serious, man. It was messed up. And when I finally did see that deer, my heart wanted to jump out of my chest. And I just wanted to put hands on him and just feel him, but I had to give her her moment. It was her buck.
Yeah, although, that was a cool moment, and I did get to hold like the antlers first, but yeah, I was proud of my dog. I think that was the first thing I said. He had filmed the track, and I think the first thing I said was, "She did awesome."
Yeah, she really did.
That's how important that deer was to him, and yeah, it was important to me, but easily it was
one of the coolest, or I guess not coolest, but I guess one of the,
it's pretty memorable.
I learned a lot of lessons, Chad, and I learned them the hard way. Never
You and
been
me
the
both,
type. I
brother.
don't read a book.
Yeah.
I don't read books and I learned this. No, I got to go out there and fall on my face a lot of times to actually learn and genuinely get the story of it, right?
But does that really fall on your face? I mean, and we're in his bed at one point, right? So where the deer's bedded.
Yeah.
You know the trail that he's walking down to where he's going to feed. It's like he followed that path A to B, but it just wasn't exactly where you thought. Like these things are wild animals. Like everyone gets so, well, I get pictures of him here. This is where he beds, like A to B.
They're gonna
get somewhere in the
go.
middle. Like the deer could go behind you. It could walk through. I mean,
right.
we had a 180-inch deer 30 yards from us for 10 minutes.
Right.
Couldn't see him. Just knew it was a deer. Like that's hunting. Like that's, you know what I mean? No matter how much we think we have them figured out, they're still wild animals.
Oh, you ain't kidding. And when you think you got them figured out, you're dead wrong.
Yeah, a lot of times.
In most
a lot
cases.
Of times, yeah.
But I guess when I was saying that I fell on my face, honestly, like with that, what I learned in all this is that that deer did mean a lot to me. He genuinely did. Okay, so going up to that text message that I got that Skank is dead. Okay, going up to that, I still had it in my mind. Like I was gonna kill him. There's no doubt whatsoever. It was just a matter of when or how, and it wasn't a matter of if at all. Swear to God, no ands, ifs, or buts about that. And that was wrong of me for one, but two, when that happened, okay, I was not upset in any way, shape, or form. I was so pumped up for her and for us as a couple and as a hunting duo. I was so pumped up for her, and I learned that that I loved that deer, but I genuinely love her more then I loved that deer.
That's a good thing.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I didn't
Right
need
answer.
I didn't need for her to shoot the deer to learn that, I guess, but it was, it was important for me, I think, to have that happen. And
I'm just glad he's dead.
to that.
So, I guess the story of Shank, that comes to an end. But that's, 3-4 years of history. That deer's 6.5, 7 years old.
Yeah.
Something like that. So a lot of history, a lot of work, obviously, put into that. One thing I want to ask you specifically, Dan, is I've been in situations where you get fixated on deer, and like that's the deer that you're hunting, and like it's him or nothing, and it's been that way for a while with you. So when you, and this is something I've never experienced, but when you know that deer's dead, like in this case, your wife kills him, like where do you go? Like where do you go from there? Like you've hunted and spent so much time with that deer. Like it's not like a Rolodex where you could just say, oh, here's another 180-inch deer. I'll hunt Jim Bob. He's not 187, but he's 177. Yeah. Like, there's no Rolodex like that in a lot of cases. So I guess 2-part question. One, where do you go now? And like, how hard is like mentally to think about like, okay, well, the biggest deer that I've been hunting for the last 2 years is dead now. Now what do I do?
I've been lost, honestly.
Yeah.
This happened to me 3 years ago or 4 years ago, Stacy. Do you remember the
Target buck?
Target buck?
There was
about
literally
a 200-inch.
tears. It got hit by a truck or
He
car.
got
or
hit by a
something.
little Geo Metro, and I was in there that day to kill that deer. I was in there that morning. I filmed a buddy of mine, Andy. I filmed him shoot another buck, and I planned on going back out there the following day too, because I knew in that time frame I'm a 365-day year kind of guy, right? Where I believe a deer is going to do the same exact thing within a 24-hour to 48-hour period, 365 days from what he did the year prior.
Yep.
Now Target buck on that date showed back up. Guess where I was? I was in the tree stand waiting for him. He didn't show up that morning. He showed up actually like late morning to midday. But while he was coming from, it was a housing development, coming from over there to the woods where I was able to hunt him, he got hit by a Geo Metro. And you asked Stacy.
I have a lot to say about this one.
Me sitting in the driveway. I mean,
He's crying. And I walk out and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Did something happen in your family? Like my mind is going 100 miles an hour. Like who's in the hospital? What's going on? My target deer got hit by a car. And I'm like, that is okay. We're going to move on. We're going to be all right.
Well, so with that, I guess, when I get fixated on an animal, man, like it's hard for me to break off. It is, and it sucks. I don't want that. I genuinely wish there was a switch. Like I could turn it off and I don't have to like ruin my life basically to try and achieve this goal that hasn't happened. It's not going to happen probably because I screwed up somehow one way or another, but so that's basically, with Shank, I did the same thing, man, and I fixated and I went all in on that deer. Now trust me, there are other deer I could have went after and most likely more probable kills. Yeah. When I'm looking at different deer, I'm looking at how probable it is that I'm going to kill them. How old are they? How smart are they? Because everybody's different, or every deer is a personality, no different than us. Yep. And that deer was probably at the highest of the not probable for me to kill.
The lowest.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Like it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Like, or it was, it was going to probably rely on some luck.
Right.
Along with everything else.
Right.
But that deer really. It honed my skill set, that deer, more than any other deer. And regardless if I killed him or, he could have got killed by a neighbor. And that deer, I've really learned a lot off of Shank. And he schooled me, boy, for a lot of years, a lot of times, a lot of hunts. And when I say a lot of hunts, I might have hunted him like 8 times to 10 times in the 3 years I hunted him, or 2 years I hunted him, and then the first day of the season he got killed by her, the last year. But I learned a lot off of that deer. And what was the actual question?
What are you gonna do now?
Well, yeah, there was
like,
two
where
parts.
do you go
So-
from here?
Yeah, so
I don't think he knows.
the deer that I actually had her in there, like I said, was Moose.
Yeah.
I had her in there after him, and he's a big 4-year-old, and he is showing up pretty regularly right now. Once gun season hit in Ohio, he went nocturnal as all get out. I'm sure that he's probably doing something in that bedding area, but I'm not going to go in there after him. And he's actually, what I believe, I cannot confirm this, but I believe that he's using Shank's bed up front. And I'm hoping that the neighbors aren't listening to this, because I don't want anybody going in there and boogering him out of there. But he's a good buck. And there's also another buck that I have on the very back of the property. He doesn't bed on the property, though. And see, when there's a buck that's bedding on the property, I feel it's a probable thing. It should probably will happen, right? But if there's a deer that's not bedding on the property, and we're outside of the rut now on December 7th, 8th, whatever it is right now, it's going to take a lot for that deer to
100%.
change his bed, 5-year-old, to change his bed and come, live on my place, which is not probably going to happen. So I got to kind of set my sights to something that's more probable. And, it kind of is a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders too, because, I'm not just hunting moose. I'm not just hunting Too Short, which is the big G3 buck. And I just caught wind of a 165-ish inch 8-point that is running around down there. I've not had pictures of him myself, but 165-inch 8-point.
Giant deer.
And the neighbor on the back that told me that, I mean, he's spot on. Every time he was within inches of what Shank was. He knew Shank was alive, or knew Shank was there anyways. So there are deer to go after, and it's not just one. I don't care. I don't care if I do fill my tag, because if one of those deer are, still alive next year and find home on our farm, then, I'm excited for next year already. So I guess to answer your question, what do you do after your target animal is dead? You start looking forward, man. I mean, like, I'm not looking back other than what I've learned and the memories that were made, doing that, chasing that animal. But I'm not looking back. I'm looking forward to what's to come. I mean, there's still a lot of season left now for me, and a lot of deer that, something might happen on. Hopefully they do, and if not, then there's next year.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a couple of valuable things I think that you mentioned in there. One that I personally can relate to is like when you said it felt like a weight almost being lifted off your shoulders. Because I think as deer hunters, guys like you and I, like, we're kind of, I say we're men's men. Like, we like to do things with our hands. We're competitive. Like, you want to be a BA. That's we'll just you want to be known as a killer, right? And to pin yourself, because that's what, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when I'm the couple deer that I've hunted on public ground and said, okay, it's this deer or nothing, like, I'm pinning myself against that deer.
Yeah.
And, like, I want to prove, like, that I'm an assassin.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, 100%. So not hunting that deer and just going in and say, okay, well, there's other good deer to hunt. I'm just going to kill a deer. Like, Cameron and I just talked about this. I don't know. Maybe we were sitting in the office or something, but it feels like it reminds me of turkey hunting. Like, you're out there to kill a good bird. Like, and
I
it's
don't
fun.
know. Yeah, I don't know which ones they are, right?
Yeah. Like, you're just going out there to kill something that makes you happy and gets you excited, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, I find myself pinning myself against deer where it's like, yeah, it's still fun. Like, it's still a lot of work, and you're still getting after it. But it does feel like
it's a lot of frustration.
Yeah, you can beat yourself up mentally.
I do it.
It's
every year.
Yeah,
and I
it's
tell
hard.
myself I'm not going to, but I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I'm gonna beat myself up over the failures, and that's what, for me anyways, man. It seems like the hunting has been for the past probably 6 years. Well, 5 anyways. It's like one failure after another. And
lessons.
when it does, yeah, they're
Lessons.
lessons. And you know what? Like I'm putting myself in some pretty nasty scenarios too. I'm not just hunting, a farm in Ohio. I'm hunting a lot of public land deer in Pennsylvania. I spent more time hunting PA than I did Ohio this year. I've probably hunted 3 times in Ohio this year. And Ohio is not easy, I promise you that. There's a lot of pressure. There's actually more pressure in Ohio than there is in Pennsylvania, and I will stand by that. On farms in my area, I should say.
Yeah.
But so, I've been hunting Pennsylvania bucks pretty heavily too. That's as much of a goal for me as it was to, shoot Shank. Is for me to harvest a good mature PA buck on a new game lands. And I've hunted we'll say Allegheny National Forest for 9 years now, and I've gotten it done, and I believe like if I had my season planned out, I could go to a specific funnel or downwind side of this swamp, which is a big doe bedding area, and I could probably have an opportunity within 3 or 4 days, right? But I didn't want to do that this year. I wanted something different, and I wanted to broaden my skill set and broaden my level of what I consider a hunter and a good hunter. I wanted to learn a new area, and I wanted to try and kill deer in a new block of woods. And I have not yet succeeded. I mean, Stacy shot her buck out there, and obviously there's I can get on good 2.5-year-olds, 3.5-year-olds even, but them bigger ones, man,
It's tough.
they're different animal.
Yeah.
They're tough.
Yeah.
They're tough out there.
Yeah. Yep. So, I guess we're going 40 plus minutes on Shanks. So, let's I guess for all the talk on him, if anyone wants to see what that deer looks like, were you guys filming that hunt? Was that filmed?
No, I wanted to.
I was
be
filming
on
so here's the deal: is I was filming my hunt. I wanted to sit with her, but guess
Okay.
what she said?
Nope.
You have bad luck and you stink. So,
Yep.
and I agree with her.
That's
But
funny.
no, I was filming like my part of the hunt, which was 50 yards from her. And I got, the recovery and everything. There's no kill shot in it, but
Right,
there is a
right.
story to be told, and I believe we'll probably put that out there here soon.
So that will be on the
time in YouTube.
Time in YouTube, and then also that deer will be shown on one of our Whitetail Cribs episode
Yeah.
released here very shortly. So if you guys, listeners wondering what that deer actually looks like and why there's so much talk about him, make sure you guys check those two videos out. But now I want to get on the topic of Remy tracking deer and how and why you, Stacy, have kind of become obsessed with this in your own way. So I guess give us what made you it's because it seems like from the outside looking in, I've never talked to Dan about this, but it seems like this was like a spur of the moment thing,
No.
out on a limb. I'm gonna go buy a dog and start tracking deer.
No, this was something probably from when I first picked up a crossbow. I said I had gotten back into hunting again with my dad, I had hunted growing up, but when I went to college, I got a softball scholarship to Mercyhurst, and being away from my parents, and back home where I used to hunt, I kind of got away from hunting. But I missed it, and I got back into it. And I remember going home and I took a shot on a doe that I probably shouldn't have. And I remember my dad saying, I kept saying, if we had a dog, because it was a gut shot, and you hate to do that to a deer. And I remember my dad saying, if you took your time and made a good shot, you wouldn't need a dog ever. And I said, it happens though, Dad. Like this is gonna happen, and it does. It happens to a lot of people.
Yes.
If you hunt long enough, you're gonna make a bad shot, or something happens, or the deer
More
takes
than
a
I
step.
do of-
Yeah.
Or the dog takes a step. So, it's always been in the back of my head, and it's frustrating. I mean, every hunter knows how frustrating that is when this thing's dead. You just cannot find it. So, and I know PA, I mean, that was what the hang up was. You know, I kept telling my dad, I'm going to get a dog. I'm going to get a dog. He's like, oh, you don't need a dog. But the hang up was it wasn't legal. So, you know, PA finally, 2 years ago now, I believe, you know, legalized tracking dogs. And when that happened, you know, we get married and we were missing a dog. We have a smaller dog, but I grew up with big dogs. I wanted a dog. I wanted a big dog. And so, you know, we went out and we decided, I had researched a couple breeds and I wanted a dog with a good nose. Well, hounds, you're not going to get much better than a hound. Bloodhounds are the best. There's no doubt about that. But they're drooly, they're messy, they're big dogs. I think they're awesome, but for this house, I didn't think a bloodhound was a good fit. So I like the look of the coonhound, the blue tick coonhound, and we found a breeder in Ohio, and I picked out a puppy, and I told him, it was kind of quick in that sense. I told him, I said, hey, I just put a deposit down on a female blue tick. Oh, okay.
Life comes at you fast.
Yeah, and another thing that led into it, and this was kind of a personal thing between the two of us, we've been having infertility issues, and, you know, it hasn't been working for us. And, you know, there's this hole, you know, I in my life, and not that a puppy's a replacement in any way, I'm not saying that, but just being able to care for something small and being able to raise this pup to do something together and go on adventures, you know, was a big deal to me. So, you know, that's when the puppy came, was when we were kind of struggling with that in our life. And so there was some thought behind it. It wasn't just on a whim. So, yeah, we get this pup, and I did feel a little bit of pressure, you know, like we knew what her purpose was going to be, but I wasn't sure I was ready to take her from that to tracking dog that was going to be finding these deer. And I did a lot of research online and watched videos, read books, everything I could get my hands on I was reading, or, you know, and it started by the year before is when we had to prep for all this. Like, we had to collect blood from the deer that we had shot that archery season, even though she was teeny tiny. She wasn't ready to do any of this, but we had to collect stuff. And, you know, the liver, we had, you know, because puppies love when you do liver drags. So, yeah, collected the liver, we collected blood, we collected hide. My dad was collecting hides for me, deer legs. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it.
Yeah, what's important people know, and they have a false sense of reality, is that it's not me at all. Like, all that was her. It was her dream, her vision.
Right.
And she's the one who, you know, got the stuff to make that actually happen and train the pup. And
there's a lot of planning.
I was there, you know, I was at the third wheel, you know, like helping out when I could and maybe going on some tracks and stuff. But, man, like, you know, there was a lot of times where I just didn't feel like going every day. In the summer, I'm talking like the heat of the summer with ticks, and you know, she was out there and she was training that dog for what she
I have
murdered this year. She did awesome.
I have a wonderful job in the sense that I'm a school teacher, so I am off in the summer, and I really utilize that time to go out, and we did a lot of tracks. It was probably every other day, maybe, you know, three times a week at least, or maybe more.
Every day.
Yeah, sometimes every day, depending on what we were working on.
So that's something like you get, I mean, as far as being on a schedule, like there's a lot of discipline to maintain there to, I guess, bring that dog along through its...
I don't know what everyone else's is, do you? What everyone else's regimen is, or whatever,
I'm not,
everyone else's puppy
it's just
training is?
No, I do know you want to have good obedience. You know, they need to know sit, stay, come, all that. But that was the basic stuff. But then you want a puppy that's going to, like, naturally take to it. I mean, they got to love it.
Right.
That's not something you can really teach them. If they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. So I was very fortunate that we picked the right puppy, you know, because even in a litter of coonhounds, you're going to have, you know, a couple that aren't going to turn out.
So are there, I mean, you said you did research, like, leading up to this. I guess let's go back in, like, somewhat of a timeline. You'd gotten the idea of purchasing a dog 2018 or 2017, and the dog was actually bought in 18?
That was,
I think 17 we were like on around about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you went to look at that litter, like, are there telling traits about, like, if the dog shows this characteristics, like when it's 8 weeks old, it can have tendencies to be a better...
There are tests and everything, but this was all done online, so we really it was luck.
Okay.
You know, and I
Yeah,
did
but you
notice
said
this
that
dog
she
she
the
was
only one with her nose to the ground.
She was. There were a couple of
That's
videos
what I
that the
mean, yeah.
breeder had posted, and you know, she had her nose to the ground and was sniffing around when the other ones were eating. And I'll be honest though, the main reason I wanted her, I wanted a female, and I wanted the runt. And people are probably like, why would you want the runt? But I wanted the runt because you're going through some really thick brush. I mean, there have been times when I've been on my hands and knees crawling through stuff, and
looks
I
like she
can't
gets
imagine. I mean, these people that take these bloodhounds out, more kudos to them, because I can't imagine. I've had to carry her over like streams or through brush that she can't get through, and I can't imagine trying to pick up a bloodhound or something bigger than her. So it's nice having a little bit smaller of a hound. I do know the long-haired dachshunds are very popular, and at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I'd want something like that, but now I see why there's such a,
I have no idea what those are.
they're like
It's a wiener
long-haired
dog.
wiener dog.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, all
I
right,
think
yeah.
Oh yeah, Dan wants a
Help
wiener
train it.
dog.
Mr. Weenie.
Mr. Weenie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are real popular for tracking dogs, and I couldn't understand why. But you know, she pulls me sometimes, and if we're going through like thick jaggers and that thorn bushes, that's no fun. So, yeah, the smaller the dog, I can understand why that's a much better.
That's cool. I guess that's something you don't think about unless
Oh,
you've
until
been there
you
and
have,
done that.
yeah, I've got scars.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you go through the summer. You have all this prep last year, saving all these
Deer parts.
organs and like is that to give them, like, what's the thought process there? Is that to give them different scents on different types of hits, or what?
No,
like
it's
what?
basically enticing them at first. Like a liver drag, a short liver drag is where
And
you
hide drags.
Yeah, but a short, like a puppy can't resist a liver, you know? So you want to get them going on a liver drag, maybe 20 feet, 20 yards or something, straight line, get them on that. And then you start progressing it longer and longer. And you want to make some turns, like a 90-degree turn, because the dog's probably naturally going to go past the turn, and they have to learn how to correct themselves and come back and make the turn. And so you just keep progressing less and less. You want to get to the point where it's less and less blood to eventually, like I had shown you out in the garage there, that we have those hoof boots.
Yeah.
Deer, they're supposed to, each deer has interdigital scent in between their hooves, and it's particular to that deer. So she should be able to track a deer even if it's not bleeding, because she locks on to that scent of that deer. Even though we're crossing over other deer paths and everything, she should be locked on to that deer. Now, I'm not going to say she hasn't gone off on what we call a hot trail, because, I mean, that is very distracting to a young puppy. You come across a live deer that's just bedded down there, and it crosses the path that we're going on, and she's going to take off. But
I have a question on the I guess interdigital glands. Like when a deer is hit,
yes,
does the scent in that gland change?
I don't know if
Danger.
That's what I'm wondering.
100% does.
Well, I have read a hit deer drops like it's adrenaline.
Rush, right.
And so that dander coming off that deer it's different, and a dog can sense that.
Well, so where my eyes were really opened up to like Remy and how well her nose actually, how good it actually is I have a buddy, Brandon, who shot a giant in PA this year, and big non-typical, and he shot him like back guts, and it took us probably 2.5 hours to cover, what was that, 40 yards we covered, or 50 yards?
Yeah, I was on
finding
call.
I'm talking spotty blood.
Oh, so without the dog, you're tracking.
I was
this
at
is
home.
And she was on standby, you
Okay.
know, and
He
this
didn't-
was like he didn't want to bring the dog in because she does bark, and she's loud, but it finally got to the point where we're like, man, like we're like on our hands and knees, and I consider myself a decent tracker, but it was getting to where I'm like, man, it's not looking very good, let's, like, we have a resource, and she's
Use
waiting.
it.
She wants to bring Remy out. Let's bring her out. And Remy had just found her buck that day.
She was on
Gamelands,
fire
which is a
that
whole
week.
nother. I'd let her tell that story, but She went literally the 60 yards that we made it, or 50 yards that we made it, in a matter of 2 seconds. That took us 2 hours, maybe 3 seconds. Okay. But then she went directly straight to that deer. And you know what was funny is we left, it was an older gentleman who owns the property, left him on the trail probably, at our last blood. Remy did not give two craps. Didn't even know he was there at all. Like,
I had
she
asked him, though, not to say anything to her. She was working.
Like, had no idea. Like, didn't break from game. Like, she gets in the zone like it's game time, man. Went right to that deer. And Stacy's up there screaming, and we're down, like, in this big creek bottom. And he's right here. My buddy Brandon's like, oh, my God. Did she find it? We went run and run, and Remy's already got this thing like mowing it down and trying to eat the deer. But
that is the best part of all this, is finding. That's the most thrilling part, of your hunt, and I get to relive that when we find them over and over.
Right.
But I will say it's a very emotional hobby. I mean, you also relive not finding deer for people, like whether we hit a property line and we can't pass, or. It's really hard to tell the people too, like, I think your deer's still alive. I think sometimes we get called in and they think we're miracle workers, and it's like, I can't track a deer that's not dead. I mean, like, it's still out, it's still walking, running, whatever, it's still going.
So what are some of the, like, when you get a call and someone says, I shot this deer, can't find, like, what are the questions that you're asking, like, to screen them? Because I'm sure maybe in the early stages you're going on as many as you can to get the experience.
That's what
like,
this year was. And I have learned so much. And next year will be totally different.
But there's a lot of questions that are asked.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. But he's right. Like, it was overwhelming.
We'll have to screen them next year.
Yeah, I'll have to.
I mean, it was like every day she was getting calls.
One of the things I know that greatly affects whether it's a recovery or not is a pass-through. I went on a couple that were not, it was 4 or 5 inches penetration. I know it was they're always a great shot.
Of course.
Of course,
yeah.
Every time they're, and I probably would have said
it just didn't pass through. Oh,
yeah. Okay.
But,
you hit something.
And that very likely could kill a deer, but I'm just saying statistically, like, if I hear it's not a pass through, I'm not real hopeful.
Do you know those numbers off the top of your head? Or am I putting you on the spot?
She's got pull your statistics.
Yeah, if you have the numbers, like, those are some things, like, I would
detailed, like,
every
track. It's really
my phone,
cool.
yeah.
I mean, you can sit there and, like, let her read for a half hour, and you'll be like,
I'm a little bit of
that's close of attention. I mean, it's amazing.
Numbers. Well, here's the thing: numbers don't lie, like that.
Yeah. But see, what I wish that you would have had done is get a count, or at least ask the hunter whether they were shooting, like, say, a mechanical or a fixed blade.
Most of them have been mechanical. I haven't had any fixed blades.
And that's kind of what the ones that I went on, I shoot a mechanical. She does too now, but a lot of.
So does this make you question, like, your broadhead choice?
100% it does. But I just, accuracy is important to me.
Right.
And I'm also aware that I need more forgiving. I'm not a perfect shot. So.
But doesn't that go either way? Like,
yeah, it can.
With a mechanical, you have a bigger cut. Like, you go from 1.25 inches or whatever, an inch to 2 inches, sometimes over 2 inches. But then you have the forgiveness of a fixed blade, like being able to maybe increase penetration.
Yeah.
Your kinetic energy isn't lost. Like,
he knows how I feel about this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's seriously.
I favor the fixed blade.
And I'm leaning, like, seeing more of these tracks and what's recoverable and what's not, and what actually does die. I'm starting to, like, lean this way a little bit. Like, maybe I need to get back into the fixed blade broadhead game a little bit and figure something. Maybe I need to retune, my arrows, or my bow, I should say, to a fixed blade broadhead, and maybe find something it's confidence too,
Oh, for sure.
I've had some, not so perfect shots with fixed blades that I have said in my head, at least, that, man, if I were shooting a 2-inch cut, probably would have got some lung on that, you know?
Yep. Yeah. That's where it's like, yeah, it goes, it's either
a
way. Like
double-edged
there's
sword,
pros
man.
and cons to both, but.
Go ahead and give them some of your statistics. I'm going to use the bathroom.
There. I mean, we've went on, let me see, 15, 24 tracks to date. Obviously, like we had said, her first one was with Shank. That was really good blood, so that was a definite find. Now, this is her first year, so there were a couple hunters that have called me back only to tell me that they found the deer the next day, which is always, that's a really heartbreaking one for me to hear, because like how was my dog so close and we did not find this deer?
Right.
There was the hunter, I went on a track October 4th. We did not find it that night, but he called me back the next day. However, he told me later he thought he shot the same deer twice. It had come out. I know, right? Like, I get all these crazy stories. He had shot high and like skimmed its hide on the top of its back. And then he waited to get down. And an hour later, he thought the same deer came out, and he shot, and which he thought was a lung shot. And the blood dried out or whatever. He couldn't find it. So I'm thinking there's 2 arrows in the same deer. Okay. Come to find out, it wasn't. It was a complete, he shot at one deer, didn't kill it, killed the other deer. Remy didn't find it, but then looking back, I mean, we had 2 different blood trails. So
what does that do to a dog, like having 2 separate track jobs like that?
Well,
I mean,
as a young puppy, I mean, that's obviously confusing. So I was kind of beating myself up a little bit about it, you know.
And that was only
that was her second track.
Right.
And she gets this, you know, this track where it's 2 different deer were hit, where he thought it was only one. So she does not recover this deer. He calls me the next day and says, hey, I found it. It was only 20 yards from where she first took us. And I'm like pretty upset, you know, with myself, and I'm disappointed with my dog. And I'm like, what the heck? And here, I mean, there was 2 different, I mean, this deer, the other deer went in there too. So we have a deer that's also bleeding, and then this one that was dead. And I will say, one of the worst things hunters can do if they know they need a dog, please do not walk all through the area and do a grid search with your buddies. Like, please don't do that. If you know that it's kind of getting spotty, mark last blood and back out. Like, because what you can't see, you're it's getting on the bottom of your boot, and you're just contaminating that trail for that dog. Like, you're taking those boots that you've now walked on, and you're spreading this track for this dog in a bunch of different directions. And the more people, the worse it gets. So best thing to do, try to stay off the trail if you can see it, and as soon as it starts getting spotty, mark it and back
tell
out.
The difference too, if someone has walked on it or not.
That's what I was going to say. Like, we were always taught to blood trail a deer off the actual tracks and blood of where, like, I feel like this is something else that we talked about again on the podcast not too long ago, but like tracking deer is kind of like a lost art. Like, people want to shoot them and they want to watch them fall. Right to it. And they climb down 2 minutes after they shoot them and go right to the deer, and they push them. And like, there's a whole
if you don't watch
new can of worms there.
If you don't watch them fall, the rule of thumb I would say would be a 4-hour thing. Okay. But so if you feel confident in your skill set of being able to say where you hit that animal, and you know how long it might take for that animal to expire with that hit, then I would say, you know, maybe sooner. But if you don't watch it physically die, and Stacy, I think when we get to your Pennsylvania buck, this was a misread shot on my part on video, and we almost paid for it. You know, we essentially did, and she'll get there.
So what's a good rule of thumb? I guess you make a shot. Okay, you see the deer run off. You think it's a good shot, but you don't see the deer fall. Like, do you wait 20 minutes to climb down from your tree stand to look at impact? Like, what is a rule of thumb? Like, archery, you make a good shot, or you think you make a good shot. Okay, maybe the deer mule kicks, maybe it doesn't. But how long? Like, we were always taught 20, 25 minutes.
I've always
you
heard,
sit in the stand
yeah.
and you do nothing. Whatever. You climb down and you go try to find your arrow, and that dictates what you do next.
And one of the most
30
important parts of
30
that
minutes, okay.
is when there is not the sign to go after it, like blood that has bubbles in it, or bright pink blood.
Right.
If you don't see that, you didn't see the deer go down. The most important thing is it starts actually from that second that arrow is released. Is you don't or start screaming or do anything stupid like that. Don't call anybody on the phone and start talking extremely loud.
Right.
And when you're getting down out of the tree stand, you get down
Quiet.
quietly.
Yeah.
And
That's
you treat it as if that deer is underneath of you still.
Right. That's actually a mistake. I mean, I've made that mistake before.
I do it too.
I've made it on a couple different times.
I'm telling you, I'm coaching, but I'm not like,
Yeah.
do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
Like,
Well, that's a hard thing to control your
It
emotions,
is.
especially
He
on
called my dad over my deer in PA before. I didn't have a good feeling. He called my dad and was like, "Oh, she just shot a deer in PA. We're gonna go get
dude, he
it."
was
I was
done.
like, "Don't
I
do
watched
that."
It, like I was confident.
He was confident. I am always hesitant. I'm always not sure. Like I'd rather be that way, and be able to bring the dog in. But
We had hunted
sometimes,
for 3 hours after?
yeah. So
3 hours after, because that morning I left my bow at home. We got all the way out to the game lands, and seriously, we got out to the
He
game
did.
lands, and I grabbed my tree stand and hers. I made her a little like real small hanging hunt set, and grabbed hers. I'm like, I left my bow at home. And she looked at me and just started laughing, and I'm like,
I said,
seriously
and
left
I
my bow
said,
home.
this will be the morning that I shoot a deer because that was the when the camera fell off the tree and I shot Shank.
Oh yeah.
I always say whenever there's equipment failure or Dan forgets something, that's when it happens for me.
What's going through my head?
Well, that should happen for me all the time because Cameron is like constantly forgetting stuff or dropping something out of a tree. So
That's awesome.
I just knew it. I knew it was gonna happen because
Well,
Dan didn't have his bow. So
I grabbed her crossbow and I hunted for like 3 hours after, and then we decided to go ahead and get down, check for blood,
and I said all along, what we should probably go get the dog.
and she was. I'll give her that, but I saw the shot. It was right behind the shoulder.
It's on video.
And in the video of it going past me in slow motion, this thing is buried to the fletchings, right? What I didn't see on a little 3 or 2.5 inch LCD screen on the back of my DSLR is that arrow planed and went down the side. It was a 1/4-2 shot, and in the video, you hear me say, "Just be patient." It smacked.
it felt right. I took it.
Just be patient. Boom. Like she shoots. But yeah. So it was a 1/4-2 shot, which it all boils down to a lot of times too. What shot are you taking?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you do it knowingly. Sometimes you do it.
I will say,
excited.
that was not an ideal shot, but I took it because the deer was behind me. Dan was on the other side of the tree, so it was actually a great shot for Dan. But I couldn't turn this way, and I was having trouble turning this way, so I actually turned in my stand.
Yeah, it's a little platform.
Yeah, it was a very small platform that I'm on. So as soon as I got turned, I didn't want it to walk any further because I wouldn't have been able to get around the tree, and I took it when I thought it was the best opportunity I had. But yeah, it was a rough shot. Mm-hmm. Don't want to take that shot. And we heard a loud crash. We thought the deer went down. So like Dan said, he took my bow after that since he didn't have his, he hunted for about 3 hours because he thought maybe something else would step out. This deer had been around a bigger deer, right?
Yeah, when there was a 5-year-old that was.
So we thought maybe it will come out, but yeah. So we get down and we start looking for blood. We had good blood, but we walked up
Probably
to
70 yards we went.
Yeah. I wanted to get the dog, but he did not, because he wanted to hunt there that evening. And like we said before, she howls.
Yeah,
That's-
and
that's what a coon hound's gonna howl.
Like really, with your decision making, whether you're gonna bring the dog in or not, like once you bring the dog in there, it's pretty. When she shot Shank, we brought Remy in there. It took till I think October, like late October, before any good deer were.
2.5, 3 weeks before it settled back down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we had followed the trail, and we saw a deer, a buck, get up and take off. And she said, "Oh my God, was that my deer?" Saying, "Nah, no way in heck, man."
it was too small, he said.
It looked like it was a smaller deer than what, like.
He said, "That's not your buck. That's too small." I said,
looked
"I don't
smaller.
know."
But it was right on the edge of this swamp where I know they bed, and I had my boy, maybe, went up and I found his bed that he was in, and there was a blood spot in it, where he had actually come to find out it exited, down in his stomach, and that was probably where the blood was coming from. So we immediately just backed out. And came back and got Remy. And how long did we give him?
We waited 3 more hours, got Remy, had your friend with us. Because
Brandon came.
that was the other track she went on that day. His friend Brandon was trying to keep his mind off of.
He shot that giant and needed to burn some time.
Yeah, so
Ease
he
his mind
said,
a
"Can I
little."
just go with you guys just to keep my mind off all this?" She said, "Sure." So Remy, she locked on, and she took us right through the swamp. But then after the swamp, I found a little bit of blood on a sapling, so I knew she was on it. But then after we got out of the swamp, nothing. No blood, no hair, nothing to indicate she was on the track. So I started doubting her. And I'd say, we're going. She's picking up
You guys
speed.
are running.
Yeah, she's picking up speed, and the distance between Dan and I is getting larger and larger. And we left his friend on last blood,
I could
so
hear
he's
Remy, 200
yeah.
yards away.
So his friend is way back there, and Dan's getting back there, and I'm in the game lands now, and this is a big game lands, and I'm starting to get a little worried. But I'm letting her go because I've not trusted her before, only to be wrong. So I yelled back to Dan. He goes, "She on it?" I'm like, "I have no idea, but I'm gonna let her go
because
she's
stuff everywhere.
You're scouting.
He's
Yeah.
scouting.
Yeah.
I'm
Big rubs.
still thinking, okay, maybe my dog's on it. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's tracking a live deer at this point. I have no idea because there's no way of telling. There's nothing. There's no blood. And she's howling at this point, which sometimes she does when she knows she's got this. She starts hound dog howling very loud.
I got excited when I heard that.
All of a sudden I see a deer, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," I'm yelling. I'm like, "Dan, she's got it. It's laying right up here." Well, I walk up on it, and this deer, you could see he's still breathing. And now I'm panicking, oh no, now what? Dan, get up here. So we had to dispatch him.
Yeah, but so I guess what's important that we all learn from that is I've been hunting for 24 years now, and I've seen multiple hits on deer and lost deer. I've recovered a lot of them. I misread that shot from the get-go. And even after that, we did, when we put the deer up, we did what anybody should do, or hopefully will do, is back out and give him some more time. We gave him, by the time we actually got up on him, and it was probably 7.5 hours after that shot took place, he was still alive with a shot where
one lung liver gut was
it was a one lung liver gut. And I carefully dissected this thing because I had to know, man. It's interesting to me to know what actually was hit and what was not. But it was as perfect as a quartering 2-shot could be, and it did bury down to the fletching. So I thought he's donezo, man. Just a matter of give him an hour, give him a little bit of time, and he's done. But that was not the case, and it took a lot longer than that.
Let's talk about that just a little bit. So blood types, shot placement, and how long you should wait because everyone has a different.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different take on it. But in these cases, like you don't see the deer crash. Like you make the shot, you go find your arrow, and bright pink, bubbly blood, appears to be a lung shot. It's a pass-through because you have the arrow in your hand. So more than likely, probably 2 lungs. How long do you wait?
There's a difference between 1 lung blood and 2 lung blood. Or, 1 lung and two lung blood, too.
I didn't know that.
Like size of bubbles. And did you know that a muscle blood will also allow bubbles to form in it? And it will be a brighter colored red, not pink like lung blood, but that's one of the most misread
I didn't know that.
bloods is a muscle. Like you can shoot a deer in his leg, and there will be small little bubbles in it.
So still have bubbles, but not frothy like.
Correct. Yeah.
Frothy.
Like
Lung blood.
I'm like not like big like you blow milk or blow bubbles in milk. That's that's a certain lung blood. But,
No, I did not know that.
yeah, it's very interesting, and I've read that, and I have took it back to like actual being on tracks, and sure enough, that is
So- What's the difference between a single lung and 2 lung? Just the lack of bubbles, or the difference in bubbles, or
single lung.
It's
okay,
hard to
what I
tell.
have seen has been less bubbles.
less bubbles?
If you double lung a deer, it's most likely going to be coming out of its nose as well and its mouth, right? Those are usually where you just see, I'm talking puddles of blood with bubbles throughout it. These 1 lungs that we have been going on, or that I have seen, what are you looking like that?
He's went on 1 track with me.
That's bull crap. But
2 maybe.
1 lungs,
Well, yeah, there's 2 that he's talked about.
2.
1 lungs are smaller blood smaller bubbles in most cases, and not like the very frothy
Right.
like you just pour beer out of a tap. It's
Right.
like it's not big bubbly blood, and that's not nothing is, it's not a certain thing either, though.
That's-
Do you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
going off you're trying to read something that's not.
That's
tough
a judgment
because
call, and
not all lung shot deer either will bleed right away. They have sometimes, if it's high lung, that
Cavity
hole
fills
it has
up.
to fill up. So yeah, there's been ones that haven't bled much at all. I mean, it's every deer, every
Shank
track,
didn't right away either.
every deer, every track's been very, very different, and that's been really surprising to me. I mean, I'd say the dog's teaching me more than I could have ever dreamed of with this tracking. I mean, she's teaching me. I'm not teaching her at this point. It might have started off that way, but
Right.
at this point, that dog's teaching me. So
that's cool.
And she's teaching me.
So let's just circle back here, and we'll just touch base on this, and then we can get wrapped up. We're going pretty long here, but there's still a lot of questions that I have about this, so we may have to come back and do a whole other episode on the dog, because we're at like 80 minutes, and we're just like barely scratching the surface, I feel.
Yeah.
But at point of impact, you have your arrow in your hand, lung shot. How long are you telling people to wait?
Did you watch the deer drop?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You make a shot, all these shots. So we're going to play the scenario out with different, same scenario, different points of impact on a deer.
This is a fun
You
game.
have the arrow, and you have blood at point of impact. So you have your arrow in your hand. One saying lung, bright, pink, bubbly blood. How long do you wait? Like from a tracking perspective, this isn't not from a hunting perspective. I'm asking
I'll
you
be
as a
honest
tracker.
with you. I don't get those calls.
Well, that's
And
that
those are
would
the
be
ones
obvious. Right.
those are the recoveries. I
Right.
get the really tough ones that are like, you have to be a detective to try to figure out what, you're piecing together, what's going
Okay.
on here. Hair, gut matter. You're like piecing it together. Hoof prints, that's what I'm getting. Those ones that are bubbly blood.
With your scenario that you gave me, like telling you, I would say that I would want and hope that I could wait for the 4 hours. But I don't know that I would if I had
I wouldn't.
pink bubbly blood. I had the arrow sticking in the ground.
Go
and
in cautiously.
saying,
That's what I would
yeah,
say. Go in
you know,
cautiously, check your arrow. You know, there's no harm checking if you think it's a really good shot and you're having a good, if you see good sign, okay, go check your arrow. All the tracker's asking you not to do, though, is stomp through the woods, bump the deer, send it into the next county, get that scent on your shoe and track it in a different direction. That's the tough part. When you're asking a dog to come in, you want to keep it, you know, when in doubt, then you back out. So,
well, I guess let's move past that scenario thing that we were going to play out. So let's play it out a different way. What are the steps when someone isn't out and they're in need of a tracker? Like, give them your advice, what to do, what not to do, both before they make the call and then, I guess, leading up to making that call. So
I don't think they realize it till
it's too late.
Yeah,
is that too late? But till they're into it.
Well, please, every tracker is going to tell you mark your trail, definitely.
That helps.
Yeah, I love when people mark every spot of blood for me, and the reason why, because when I bring the dog in, I can tell right away if my dog's locked into that deer or if my dog's messing around, gets out of the car, just starts circling around and picks up, you know, whatever. Because I can restart her until she gets on that deer, like bring her back to the first point of blood and if it's a nice visual path with whatever you're using, toilet paper, orange tape, whatever, you can see that she's on it. And then once you have last blood, we're gonna trust the dog. But yeah, I would definitely say mark your trail as you're going. Stay off the trail as best you can. Once you get to a point where you feel a little hopeless, like, okay, this deer dried up or whatever, back out. And that's when you need to, and have a tracker on your phone already. People wait till last minute.
Good days later.
That, like, the day that it happens, and then it's like, well, I called the tracking dog, but they're not calling me back. I can't tell you how many calls I took while I was already on a track, and it's like they're getting my voicemail or just sending me texts one after another. I mean, everybody's desperate when they're looking for the big, massive buck they just shot. But
right.
Yeah, get in contact with a tracker before the season and, you know, find out from them personally what they want you to do. You know, don't wait last minute and try to find somebody. I mean, it's really tough.
Nobody's going to need it. You know, you never go into it thinking that, man.
Well, yeah.
No, and you don't want to.
Yeah.
Expecting, like, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive too. Some of them, like, I'll pay you more or whatever if you come out here. And I'm like, well, there's two people ahead of you.
Money.
I'm sure.
Yeah, there's like two people ahead of you, and the one kid didn't step, you know, this young hunter's first deer, and he stayed off the trail. I'm going to take that one before I take the one where you already had your buddies in grid searching. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, so it's tough having to, like, decide which one I'm going to go on. And I do wish there were a lot more trackers in this area because, you know.
Which is why I need a wiener dog.
It's really hard to tell people you're not going to be able to make it. And that's been really tough for me because I'm one of those people that wants to please people.
Right.
And it's hard to say, hey, I can't make it. Or it's hard also to juggle in when I'm going to hunt too. I mean, I'm doing something as a hobby that's also in my season of something I enjoy doing. And I've had to tell a couple of people, hey, I'm in a tree stand right now. Maybe I can fit you in when I get down. And, oh, okay. You know, and, but yeah, those are some of the struggles I've faced this year.
Right. So you mentioned, like, almost, you know, when you're getting customers or clients or potential track jobs, like them calling you and giving you, like, some of the details, some of the scenarios, and you wanting to take the higher odds or the higher percentage track jobs.
Course.
So how does that play into the dog's confidence, I guess? Like, does her, like, going on a track job and not finding or recovering a deer, does that play into their mentality and, like, their confidence?
I didn't think so, you know,
funny.
at first. I was told by other experienced trackers, you know, you got to get that puppy on some for sure kills. You know, that builds their confidence, and I can understand that. Like, you want them to connect with some down game before they start trying to figure out, like, okay, this deer backtracked, or like I told you before, there was that hunter with 2 different deer. She's got to be able to work through all that, but that comes later. You need some for sure kills first
And
for
she
a
can't
young
hear the
puppy.
hunter
Yeah,
telling
for a
what
young
happened.
puppy. But I never thought, she had any emotion connected to it, but I had pulled her off. We got to a property line, and it came this woods. They came up to like a residential area, and she was getting very loud. And we came up to a house, and it came up to this guy's backyard. And I told the hunter, I said, "Hey, obviously you do not have permission to cross this. This is this guy's backyard." And he goes, No, we got to pull out. And I'm like, "Yeah, she's getting really loud." We pull out, and I knew that deer was close. I mean, the way she was acting, she started howling. She was picking up the pace or whatever. So I pulled her off. She cried and howled the whole way back to the car. I got her in the car. She is.
You called me on the phone.
I called Dan on the
And
phowed
she's
because he
just
wants to know, like, how'd she do?
bellowing,
Did you
man.
find the deer or whatever? I said no, but the dog is screaming out the window. Like, she could not stop barking. She was mad. She was very upset, and she was trying to like communicate like to me, like, it shouldn't have been over. Like, that
Right,
deer's
it was
still
right
out
there,
there,
yeah.
Mom. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So, and I've had a couple like that where we've left the site and this dog is angry just by the way she's vocalizing it. But no, I can definitely tell. She knows when she's done a good job. Obviously, she knows when she finds the deer, and her reward is getting to chew on it a little bit. So, yeah, she connects. She knows what she's expected of her, but I didn't understand how much it affected her when she doesn't find them. But when she was obviously upset, like, very upset.
I mean, it makes sense. Like when you talk about specific breeds of animals to do anything, whether you're talking like thoroughbred racehorses, like
Oh yeah,
bucking cattle.
this is what she
like
does.
this is what she's bred to do. Like
Yeah.
it's in their
Yeah.
DNA to
He
track
wants to
things.
please her.
Right.
Like, I don't know that I could take Remy out and her. I don't know one way or another. I'm not gonna know probably, but they have a bond that is.
Well, you
It's weird.
you start to read your dog. A lot of trackers will tell you that. Like, the reason I'm telling you that she was verbally upset when she was screaming in the like, her bark is different. And you start to read your dog, she's messing around. Like, I can tell if she's on that deer or if she's just chasing a hot track from a live deer or whatever. But you start to see body language, and yeah. So, yeah, a bond definitely develops.
One more question.
Okay.
And then
Okay, we gotta stop.
I promise we'll have to pick this up another time because we're about 90 minutes into this. So this is something we talk a little bit about, trail cameras, when to check trail cameras, and I've seen this discussion come up, and I talked to Dan about it. I haven't talked to you about it, and I think there's probably some conflicting information that people are educated, kind of polar opposites on this. So
Rain.
I'm not setting it. Yes, it's about precipitation.
No.
So we talk a lot about checking trail cameras in the rain. We've actually have told people, we've written blog articles, we've done videos on it about, if there's a rain front coming or precipitation coming, go ahead and go into these areas, check your cameras during the rain, after the rain, or during the rain or before the rain, and let the rain wash your scent away. Now you're already shaking your head, but let me finish a little bit. The question is, how much precipitation does it take to wash away scent to where an animal can no longer detect something's there?
That's the question.
Yes, that's
the question
because
that people need to know.
and so that's one part of the question, and then the other part of the question is, geez, oh man, my mind just the oral factory. What's the
Olfactory gland?
yes? So when you're comparing your dog's nose to a whitetail's nose,
It's comparable. It's the
That's-
same.
A
Yeah.
deer's is more.
No. We looked
Deer
this up.
smell more.
The bloodhound had him. The bloodhound
Well,
actually.
the bloodhound, but the coonhound, like
they're
what Remy
comparable.
does, and when I see what she does on a deer's trail, or when she used to, like when she was a pup, she tracked Stacy, like her boot track. She knew it was Stacy. You cannot tell me that There's no scent lock. There's no such thing that is going to eliminate that.
No.
Especially with an animal that is his everyday whereabouts and his everyday life revolves around smelling and knowing what's going on by his lives or dies by that nose. Remy does it for a couple months out of the year, or maybe once a day, every single 24 hours a day.
So you're saying the whitetail
Remy's not doing it to survive, Dan.
more keen.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
But what's there in her nose is comparable to a whitetail. She's just not using it to
relying on it.
survive.
So, but it's not as
Okay.
honed, and it's not
So.
as go ahead. I'm sorry.
Back to
But
No,
I'm very adamant about
No,
that.
I
Like,
think-
people are like, oh, I don't hunt the wind. Like, well, that's why you ain't killing deer.
Well, no, I see your point that I think there is a difference between, like, just like someone who, a whitetail deer hunter. Let's just take guys like you and I, like a guy that's in the woods 24/7, that's constantly scouting and hunting. Like, their skills, like I have the same skill set as the next guy, right? We both have two legs, we both have two eyes, we both have two
Yes.
ears. But if I'm in the woods every day, like I'm going to be a lot more keen to those senses than
You
somebody
can
that's
just
not.
feel it sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So I get what you're saying is an animal that has to live
rely on it.
or die because of its nose is going to be a little more keen than a hobbyist animal that's out there
Right.
3 times a week, regardless of what
Exactly.
science is saying is actually in their nose
Yep.
for most part.
Yeah.
But
as
So
far,
answer
I agree with you, though.
yeah,
I mean, I agree
as
that
far as what's there,
is
the way
right.
the way these animals are made. Yeah.
Yes.
That coonhound has every bit as much of is it the olfactory, whatever scent?
Olfactory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
olfactory, as the white-tailed deer. So, as far as the rain, yeah, rain will definitely freshen scent. So I've had a lot of hunters. It's rained on this trail. I mean, is your dog gonna be? There's no blood left. Are you okay? I'm like, it will be fine. I mean, that dog can pick up. Coonhounds are known for having cold noses, so they can pick up old trails. And if anything, the rain actually helps them. Light rain, torrential downpour. All you're doing is you're moving those scent molecules and just shifting them and dispersing them. Think of it like a river. Like if it would disperse them further. So instead of having a nice straight line track, you're just spreading them out. Like the water moves, the water molecules will
Give
move
him
that
the
scent.
Analogy of a whitetail licking his nose.
I'm
yeah,
super
yeah,
familiar with
absolutely.
If whitetail gets nervous about being in an area. I've seen deer lick their nose and put them to
They're
She made me
wetting
look stupid
the
in
moisture.
front of
the
a lot of
moisture.
people
Yeah.
on the
They're
social media,
they're licking their
and I
nose.
had to read into it myself too,
Yeah.
because this was just this year.
That was when I
Like,
posted
"Ah,
on
I'm
your
gonna- It's
comment,
raining. I'm gonna go check cameras. Like,
and I posted, "No, don't do that." Like they're wetting their nose to get those molecules to stick.
right.
To get a better smell. So yeah, anytime that there's humidity or moisture, it's a lot easier. In fact, the worst day,
humidity.
the worst day for a dog for tracking is windy and dry. That will really throw a dog through a loop. If you go on a really dry, windy day, that's really tough for them. So the best time is humid or light rain.
it's interesting to me to try and see how I can correlate that to hunting. Though.
Well, that's
You know
that
what
was
I mean?
yeah,
But
that was the root of the
it's
question.
opened my eyes, like watching that dog do that, and I said, like, when I read the statistics and read actual like studies that a deer's nose is as good, if not better, how well she smells. And I kind of was always, I got rubber boots on. You know, they're not going to cut my boot track. You know, I'm kind of like I got a mask on or something. You know, it's not the case, man. Like, and you'd be surprised at what the wind does with whatever scent particles or what's dander off your skin or whatever it is onto trees and whatever else. Like, that dog tracks Stacy, and she, like we said, does it, you know, sometimes 3 times a week, or sometimes like this week, none, you know, but she would go out there and she would track Stacy or whatever it is that she's supposed to be tracking. But a deer most certainly can and will do such things, which is why, you know, entries and exits like come into such big play,
100%.
and why, you know, certain tree stands, like, you cannot tell me if you go out there and walk in the snow and scout, like I've done it, you've done it, you've seen, I'm sure, them walk, and sometimes around trail cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Not sometimes, a lot of times around trail cameras. Like, there's a big roundabout. They know.
Interesting stuff.
When you say it's a torrential downpour, like in between a light rain and a torrential downpour, like what is a torrential downpour versus a light rain?
You know what? I'll tell you one.
Hang on one second. I don't know if we're going to catch the audio, so let somebody repeat it. So Cameron's.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, Cameron doesn't have a headset, but he's sitting right next to us, and his question is basically, what is the difference when Stacy says a light rain and a torrential downpour? A light rain is giving the animal the advantage. A torrential downpour is dispersing the scent, making it more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the line drawn between the two? Like,
I'd say a light rain is where you're gonna like maybe still hunt.
Torrential downpour in my mind. I actually over the summer we had a really rainy period, and and he remembers. I actually was gonna take the GoPro, and she was doing awesome. She was doing awesome on her track training over the summer, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna film this. They say rain can be really tricky, but she's not gonna have any trouble. It had rained for 3 days, and it was just coming down. I'm soaked when I came in the house.
Everything was like it was soaking wet out.
What is that? Is that 2
the
inches
puddles.
of rain in 24
no,
hours?
It just didn't stop. There was no break in the rain.
There was like a few days where literally it was raining. She went out and drug in the rain.
I mean, I'm dragging a hide through a puddle that was like 3-4 inches deep.
It was raining when we went out.
And I'm thinking, oh, she's not gonna have any trouble. She'll link this together.
Was
like
that
we'll
like
hit.
a 4-hour one or something, or
Yeah, it only
some time.
a little bit of time. She completely acted like she had no idea.
It was like it wasn't there.
So you guys went and drug a hide through this area and then waited 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then brought the
hide,
dog into...
and it never stopped. I mean, it was sheets of rain coming down.
She had crushed other trails and stuff. So like Stacy wanted.
I wanted to try.
She wanted to test her, and see like what is this dog capable of, and
she's a pup, and she's a pup, and I don't know that maybe this year if we get a rain like that, I'm real curious to see what would happen because
she's no different. She's become more keen to her her craft and what she does. Like when she walked up on Shank was the first buck she walked up on. This thing's a 190 or 187 inch buck. Like she was like
my point
scared her. Like she was probably expecting to see a hide or receive a small treat, but she got to eat a deer.
My point being, Cameron, it rained a lot. Like, I mean, there were puddles everywhere, about 3-4 inches deep. That dog, she was really, I thought she may have been on it at one point when we got to the drier ground, but she was lost. So I guess it's a gray area where it becomes too much. But if it's raining for days, couple days straight, and it's just like coming down in buckets,
You're probably asking
because what
you're trail camera.
You're moving the molecules, you know what I mean? Like that hide was giving off little scent molecules. So when that rain hits it, just think of them as marbles dispersing. So now what started off as a line for the dog is now spread out like this because the water pushes it. So
and less concentrated.
Yeah, it's less concentrated and it's everywhere. It didn't go away. If that's what you're asking me, that scent didn't go away. That scent was there, but it was like marbles that just got pushed every direction, and she had no idea.
So what? Oh, go ahead, Cameron. I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking if it rains for 12 hours and it rains pretty hard, is that gonna screw it up? I'm thinking of my buck.
Yeah.
My track.
Yeah.
Before you got there, it rained for 12 hours straight, fucking poured.
It poured that day?
Yeah, it poured hard.
I'm sure that probably dispersed it a little. Yeah.
Yeah, so is that is 12 hours not enough to it be washed away? Does it have to be days?
I wouldn't say it's washed away, but like she said,
Well,
it's gonna be a harder track.
It's still, yeah.
Point.
I was, yeah.
If it were just a sprinkle, for 12
sprinkles
hours.
are great. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have
That's
been a
good.
thing.
But hard rain, like I said, I guess the marble analogy.
Compared to a hose or
sprinkler.
Just an open hose without a nozzle on it, when you constrict it down, you're going to be able to move more mud off your truck or, you know what I mean?
that scent will be there. It's just harder for her to have to piece that together. Yeah, exactly. So it's not when hunters say go in after the rain, it will wash it. No, it didn't wash anything away. It just moved it around a little bit. If it was a hard rain, it moved it, but it's there. You know.
So one
I
more.
still go in after
Yeah.
I do too, and there's something. I think there's something to this. So with that description that you said, with the hard rain and the molecules being dispersed, so they're less concentrated. In my mind, that still makes it harder to smell if it's less concentrated because it's not going to be as strong. So those, I guess in your words, molecules are dispersed. But during those rains, something happens with nitrogen and different things being released in the atmosphere, which one of those is O3, ozone, which attaches to other molecules and actually changes the molecular structure of whatever that object is. It could be rubber, it could be elastic, human scent. So that has to, like, scientifically, that has to play a part in what those animals are smelling. I mean, there's scientific, and it's not made up. That's not anything. That's scientific chemistry, I guess, that occurrence happens on a molecular structure of different.
Yeah. I hear.
I mean, it's still opinionated, right? Like,
yeah. No.
My
I will
answer to that would be, yeah, you are correct. I believe so.
Yeah.
And I personally pay close attention. Like, if I know that I need to get in and check cameras or something, I will watch for fronts, because regardless if it's a small rain or if it's a heavy rain, I feel in my heart and in my mind and in my stomach that I would rather do it then rather than if it's like and honestly, I'm probably going to go in even if it's a no rain for a couple day thing. I'm probably still going to do it if I need to do it.
If you need to do it.
Like, I'm probably still going to go do it, but I guess, like, I feel better about doing it knowing that there is going to be some rain coming or precipitation. But the actual, like, scientific, like, studies show that a little bit of rain will enhance, and it might be going back into the whole O3 thing you're talking about, and I'm not a scientist at all. I don't know anything really. I don't really know a whole lot about that, but it could be going back into that. Maybe that's why, it is said to be that they smell better, after a light rain.
I don't know. All I know is the scent molecules will get heavier with the humidity or the rain, and they stick closer to the ground. Now, heavy rain, like I said, will push them away.
Yep.
But dry wind is really hard for scent because, they dissipate.
One more question.
Oh,
I
no.
swear it's gonna be a lot.
He keeps
I know. It keeps. I told you when we started this episode, I got so many, like, selfish questions I want to ask, but I feel like some of them. Last question, then we'll get it wrapped up. It pertains, like, some of these questions, like, I'm asking them selfishly because they
That's okay.
pertain less about tracking, because I'm trying to tie them back into deer hunting. Like, how is it going to,
Right.
like, probably a lot like with what you're thinking, Dan. Like, how is this going to make me a better deer hunter?
Blown my mind.
So
She's teaching me. I told you.
we talk, like, about hunting those still high pressure days, like where your sense, like, high pressure, lots of lift, like the thermals are going.
Talking morning or evening?
Morning.
Okay.
Morning.
Yep.
So high pressure days, calm, next to no wind, you get that thermal lift, so your scent's going. Does that stuff affect the dog?
Yeah.
Like high pressure, low pressure?
I'm reading this book right now, this tracking book, and I did not like tracking at night, obviously, because visibly I like being able to see,
Right.
so I can pick up if the dog's on the right track. He had actually said the dogs prefer tracking at night because the thermals, it brings it all. Yeah, it settles, and it's easy. It's easier for them to pick up the track at night. He's like, that's the prime time for tracking dogs. And he was saying
From the ground?
he was saying that his
Can.
he said, yeah, the author was saying how nighttime is ideal for tracking dogs to get on tracks. And he was saying if you're a hunter, you'll enjoy that because it's just when you're getting out of the woods, then you can go and take these tracks, because that's the prime time for tracking dogs, because, yeah, the thermals.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. That's an hour and 45 minutes. We'll have to sit down and do this again sometime because this is just conversational, totally unscripted, and I'm sure I'm going to leave here. We're going to leave here, and we're going to be talking about it. Cameron and I are going to be talking about this the whole way home. So there's going to be a lot more questions and probably a lot more stuff to talk about sometime in the near future. So probably want to have you guys back on.
All right.
The second and third appearance of the Bayus. So how, I guess, Dan, let's wrap this up. Tell people where they can find you, Tyneman, Hang On Helper, all the stuff that you have going on, and then Stacy about the tracking and about Remy.
Yeah, you can check us out on either Carbon TV or on YouTube, Tyneman, or find us on Facebook, Instagram. Just look up Tyneman or the Tyneman, and I do a little bit of bow tuning. That's stuff I'm not trying to publicize too much, and I also own Hang On Helper, which is an implement used for hang on tree stands. It helps a lot of people to hang their stands and stay safe out there. So.
And if you need a tracker, you can find Remy and I on Running with Remy on Facebook, or if you need any tracker, you can look on unitedbloodtrackers.org and get connected there with a tracker in your area.
So super cool. So right now we're sitting northwest Pennsylvania, pretty close to the Ohio line, just to give everyone an idea of where we are. So if you're in the area and you need a tracker, you need a dog, call Stacy. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. If you haven't, this is probably the longest episode that we've ever done. If we leave it as one, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. It's awesome. If you listen this far, please be sure to leave your review, because if you listen this far, you probably thought it was pretty damn good. So take the time, leave us a review. It helps us grow our rankings on iTunes, reach new people. So thank you, and we will talk to you whenever the next one comes out.
Thank you.
Thanks.